it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We are focusing in and zooming in on how to reset the relationship patterns in your life. If you have been with or consistently feel like you are attracting the covert narcissist, surrounded by people who are narcissistic, psychopathic, people who take advantage of others, or you're constantly feeling like you're surrounding yourself with others who are taking advantage of you, exploiting you. You just don't feel comfortable. You feel there's an imbalance in the type or dynamic of relationship that you are attracting in your life. And you're now at a point where you're wondering what to do, what is wrong with me, or what can I do to change? So yes, the most positive question you can ask yourself is, what can I do? What role do I have in this relationship? And what can I personally take responsibility and accountability for, and focus on the solution and see what element or what ingredient or what mindset or habitual way of thinking, feeling, doing, behaving that is perhaps creating or adding to these relationship issues. And I oftentimes find that there is a certain way or a mindset that people tend to enter into relationships with. So it tends to basically set the tone for all relationships. And when you set the tone for all relationships, in other words, it's I always, these statements of I always do this, I always so that, I always approach it this way. So if you look at your always patterns, this will realize how you tend to perhaps, unconsciously, which means unseen or habitually or underneath the surface of it all, you tend to lower yourself, reduce yourself, or put yourself underneath others, or engage in behavioral patterns where you're constantly feeling like others are better than you, smarter than you, more this, more that. So you tend to, especially if you've been in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath, you might have put them on a metaphorical pedestal, an emotional pedestal, where you've put them, their needs, ahead of you, more important than yours, and you have subjugated yourself to a lower stance, a lower mindset. And oftentimes you can feel this in your body. If you feel a sense of, where your body is constantly rounding in when you're around them, you feel like you're encapsulating or embodying a lot of shame. You have neck problems because you're constantly, putting your head down around them, which is, again, the feel of shame, looking down, feeling less than. You're not, energetic. You're not happy. You're not, sitting up with your shoulders rolled out. Your shoulders should, try to catch yourself, because I find that oftentimes, because the body is the subconscious mind, there are ways that the body tends to react, and you don't really see that or understand it. So if you find yourself sitting down in your chair going like this, making yourself small, making yourself meek, this is not perhaps a good habit, or you've now, unconsciously, habitually found yourself doing this, or, not feeling like you can be present, or you've been kind of depersonalized by these individuals, or repeatedly so. So your body is naturally going into a depressed state, or a protective state where you're, constantly going like this. And it's creating physical problems. People have neck problems, back problems. You get a lot of the, adrenal fatigue, the anxiety, the depression from having this reduced body stance. So, for one, pay attention to your how you carry yourself. And it's not that you're basically putting yourself like an arrogant person, but notice how your shoulders are. If you're constantly rolling your shoulders in, stand up with your palms facing forward like this. So your shoulders will roll back a little bit, and it's opening up the chest area. And it's showing that you're an open heart, and you're an open presence, and you're ready to receive the good and give the good, which is, a little bit more open, and it allows the energy to kind of flow through you a little bit more positively. As you can see, someone who's like this sends off a different vibe or message than someone who is sitting with their shoulders up. And so, as you can imagine, if you're vulnerable and you're always like this, you're gonna cause a negative energy to flow through your body. So actually, how you carry yourself has a lot to do with how you feel about yourself. So if you can be attentive to that, and it's like your mother always said, stand up straight. Well, I mean, maybe she had a good point there. So pay attention to how you're presenting yourself, how you're carrying yourself. Check in with yourself a couple times a day and say, am I rounding my shoulders? Am I acting out of unconscious shame? Am I feeling ashamed? Am I feeling fearful? Am I feeling embarrassed? Because oftentimes if you have been around a lot of narcissistic people, you tend to perpetually, chronically feel embarrassed, ashamed, like your needs are unimportant, or you're embarrassed that you have needs. You're afraid to ask for what you need. You're afraid to speak up. You're afraid, or then you see the counter. People are afraid to ask for help, and they feel embarrassed because they've never been put first before, or they've never, come from this perspective. So it's new. It feels uncomfortable. And so, realize and ask yourself, okay, what kind of needs have I really been putting off and I've been procrastinating in my life? Do I have physical needs, emotional needs, financial needs, needs for fun, needs for spirituality? What kind of areas in my life have I really neglected, under-tapped, and not really, acted on in my life? Because if you've been around and attracting a lot of these narcissists, oftentimes these people end up acting as substitutes in your life. So in other words, they're, because you're oftentimes in a supportive role to them and supportive only, and they're not always supportive to you in return, they're almost like a surrogate, living vicariously through them versus living your own life. So, because you're constantly, conceding or acquiescing to their need to be more important. So you're always deferring to them. They're more important. Their needs are more important. I'm going to shut myself down and listen to them. So, if you have found yourself, being like off track for your own destiny or your life purpose, oftentimes this is because you've basically handed over your responsibility and accountability to this other person. So look at taking this back. Ask yourself, what areas of my life do I really need to be accountable for? What areas have I been wounded by these types of people and always constantly in a repetitive role where I am always subservient to others? And how can I now turn that around? How can I now be a leader? How can I now be proactive? How can I begin to embody a little bit more leadership abilities in myself, even if I have never done that before? This is new. This is uncomfortable. That is your success zone. Because the failure zone is where you always retreat and regress back to the old ways of feeling, to the old ways of acting. And a lot of people say, well, I could never do this, I could never do that. Pay attention to your self-talk as well. Because your self-talk, and this is kind of the unconscious message that you tend to say to yourself, I could never do that, I could never do that, I could never be happy, I could never be independent or autonomous in this way. Pay attention to that self-talk, whether it was those messages were imprinted on you from a narcissistic or psychopathic individual, and you felt this way, and so you basically accepted, you gave them permission to cause you to feel less than, and now it's now giving yourself permission to feel equal to or okay with. And so this will oftentimes, if you do this, you'll find that you are now better able to take care of your needs. You won't feel ashamed. I do have this need. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I do have this requirement to ask for help here, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am wanting to take a leadership role, or I am wanting to take action in this specific area of my life. And even though I'd been held back before, I think now is the time. I can begin to move forward in this area. And so you'll find that if you have a little bit more self-assertiveness and boundaries, and are able to identify when these violators and perpetrators come, i.e. a lot of the distraction, they're going to call you back, the Hoover you back syndrome. And believe me, they will try to distract you. So when this comes, learn to put your foot down and say no and refocus back on your goals, your life, your objectives, your life purpose, your destiny. And as you do this again and again, you'll find that you're taking the proactive role in taking care of yourself. And even if this feels new, uncomfortable, you're on the right track. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.